Hello there, this is Adam Shaw, I'm the Heart Guy, and today I'm going to talk about something that's very close to my heart. When sound medical advice isn't always the best option. Now let me give you an example from my history of when this was the case. I was once working on a medical ward and I was handing over this patient called Alan, and Alan had been giving the nursing staff merry hell for the whole shift. He was shouting at everybody, he was irritable, he'd upset pretty much everybody on the shift and nobody wanted to look after him. Now Alan's problem was that he had a condition called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is a progressively degenerative disease which restricts the use of your lungs. Now Alan was on oxygen 24/7 and couldn't go anywhere for very long without an oxygen mask. He spent about 23.5 hours a day connected to an oxygen mask. He was never going to get better, his quality of life was never going to improve, and he was in hospital and he'd smoked 60 a day all of his life. So he was stressed because nobody would let him go out and smoke a cigarette. So they asked me to look after him because he refused to listen to great medical advice. So I went up to Alan and I said, hello, my name's Adam Shaw, I'll be looking after you this afternoon. What name can I call you? And he just launched into this rant. He said, everybody's here a bunch of beep. I won't use the language that Alan used. And I said after his little rant, I said, that's not a very nice name. I said, what shall I call you? So I found out his name was Alan. I said, look, what's the problem, Alan? And he said, I just want a cigarette. I said, okay, get your lighter and your cigarettes, I'll be back in a minute. So I got him a wheelchair, he sat down in it, I took him outside for a few minutes, he had a couple of cigarettes, I took him back in, and he sat there with a big smile on his face for the rest of the shift, and every time I walked past, he waved at me, he smiled, and I was his best friend. Now, the stress that he had through people not taking him out would have been more damaging for him, in my opinion, than the stress that a few extra cigarettes from a guy who smoked 60 a day for at least 60 years would have had. And this for me is common sense. He wasn't going to get better through not smoking, but his mood was going to go downhill. The stress that he was going to get. And this is just one example of that the best medical advice isn't always the best advice. So on that little note, I'll leave you with that. Something to think about balance in your life.